question I'm going to address is why are property owners under such attack? The attack is everywhere and from very many directions. Well, the answer to that is easily summarized. It's Agenda 21, sometimes called Sustainable Development. What is Agenda 21? Well, let me give a general overview. Sorry. Misunderstood there. I'm going to describe very briefly what Agenda 21 is. It's a very complex, engaged, and monumental document. And I'm going to discuss a very general overview of what it is. It can be summarized from a property perspective by understanding a couple of concepts. One of those concepts is smart growth, and the other concept is the Wildlands Project. Well, smart growth is the stacking and packing of human beings in dense human settlements. We can take the San Francisco Bay Area as an example. The San Francisco Bay Area is now being smart growthized. This week, the Association of Bay Area Governments, a totally extra-constitutional form of governance, has made its ruling that over the next 25 years, 80% of all development in the San Francisco Bay Area must be in what's called priority development areas. For those who understand the Bay Area, that means the Highway 1 corridor will be filled with stack and pack housing. People from suburbia are to relocate into the stack and pack housing. The El Camino Real, which is the thoroughfare originally established by Junipero Serra, which runs from San Jose to San Francisco, will be off limits to private automobiles. And it will be redeveloped with high-rise residential units, the stack and pack units that we are all to be living in, where people will use bicycles, public transportation, and their feet to get to their assigned jobs, also stacked along the El Camino Real. There are similar engagements for the East Bay, the North Bay, and the rest of the Bay Area is going to find itself with fewer and fewer government services. Roads in suburbia will not be maintained. The rural areas are to be turned into priority conservation areas. If you happen to be a landowner in those areas, you're going to be able to get in big trouble. Now, with the federal government is really the agent, is really the organization that creates these so-called COGS, or councils of government, which exist throughout the United States. They basically cover every square inch of ground in the country. And what the federal government has arranged with the San Francisco Bay Area COG, the Council of Government, called ABAG, is over $250 billion, that's with a T, $250 billion to remake the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, the One Bay Area program is a precursor to what will happen in every metropolitan area across the country. Los Angeles comes next, and after that, it is San Diego, Tijuana. Because under these proposals, boundaries are to be abolished. The San Francisco Bay Area has 101 cities. It's going to go down to somewhere around 15 cities. Counties are going to be abolished. It is a new Sovietized form of government that comes in through our federal government under the Agenda 21 protocol. The other major Agenda 21 land use program is called the Wildlands program. You live in a wildland. That's why the dams are coming down. Because it's to chase human beings out of this area. This map reflects the Agenda 21 land use program. The red areas are wildland areas. You can see in Northern California, it's mostly red. In the wildlands areas, in the course of the 21st century, that's why it's called Agenda 21, The wildlands are to be depopulated of all human beings. And resources are not to be extracted from those areas. That's why people in Montana can't mine their mines. That's why foresters in Santa Cruz have a heck of a time timbering their lumber. The same up here. That's why all resource people are under pressure. You are not facing an isolated condition here in Siskiyou. What makes Siskiyou a little unique is the citizen reaction. But to really react, we've got to understand what their goals are and how they implement it. And that's why understanding Agenda 21 is so key. 14 years ago, a few of us in Santa Cruz formed what's called Freedom Advocates. And our effort in that period, substantially full-time for a few of us, has been to alert the American people, and really people around the world, as to the nature of and program of Agenda 21. So I invite you to our website, freedomadvocates.org, to gain the information you need to understand if you're to put what's happening to you in the context of this broader plan. The main culprit in this program is the federal government. Review Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution and come to understand what it is the federal government's power is. Remember, our forefathers said that governance begins with the family, and then it moves to the county level. And then at a lesser level, it's at the state level. And at a very small level is the federal government's authority over our lives. Living in Siskiyou, you know that that has been inversed. It is the BLM, the Department of Interior, and the Forest Service agencies that are controlling your lives, and there is no constitutional authority for them to do that. Let me describe Agenda 21 in some broad terms. There are basically three primary purposes that Agenda 21 seeks to obtain. The first is the abolition of private property. You feel that, and you feel it because that's the goal. The second is education for global citizenship. I know in Santa Cruz County schools, they don't learn anything about the American founding or the American principles. Instead, they learn the collectivist values of the world order. Several years ago, there was a poll taken of that year's high school and college graduates. And I'll contend from this polling that the educational system is working in accordance with globalist goals. Because the poll found that over 50% of the graduates that year of high school and of college identified themselves not as Americans, but as global citizens. And the third aspect of Agenda 21 is the monitoring and control of all human action. That's why the satellites are in the sky. That's why our driver's licenses are going to be converted to RFID chips, so that when you walk anywhere, an RFID reader can know everything about you that you thought was private. And we see the National Security Administration with their massive information on all of us that Snowden has given us information as to. Don't underestimate the government's thrust to gain all information on all of us in order to monitor and control our every action. It's why there are streetlights. If you go into metropolitan areas, you'll find that the streetlights, there's always cameras. And these cameras can pick up anything and everything. You go to Chicago, there's a street light on there's a camera on every building. In London, people are photographed 300 times a day. And with these RFID cameras, they're able to tell from your eyeballs exactly who you are. Technology is being used not as our friend, but as our ruler and controller. From the Agenda 21 applicants, the Agenda 21 team's perspective, They like to look at it and characterize this in the context of what they call the 3 E's. So let me spend a minute or two describing what the 3 E's are so that you know what you're facing. The first E is equity. By equity, they mean the nature of our social involvement and the nature of our emerging law in this country. And by that, they mean shifting our system of law from a system of equal justice, which is the founding principle of our Declaration of Independence. That is, the law is to be applied equally to every member of our society. Today, your children are taught that our system of justice is a system of social justice, which means that justice is meted out depending upon what category or classification of person that you are. Now, that can be judged on the basis of your gender, or your race, or your economic position, but the notion is no longer that the law applies equally to all people. And if you're a property owner, if you're a white male, you're particularly out of luck under the system of social justice that is emerging in our courts. I recently had a property right case in Alameda County. Fortunately we won it. But the judge is a proud defender, you go to his website, of social justice. You're taught in law school principles of social justice. Equal justice is being abandoned in this nation. And with that abandonment, we begin to sink. The second E is economy. And by economy, they mean 2 things. The first is the redistribution of America's wealth around the world. That's why our trade policies are as they are. That's why our unemployment rate skyrockets, because our jobs have been shipped offshore. The idea is to equalize the economies of all nations around the world as we launch to the new world order. The second purpose of the economy section of Agenda 21 is to shift from free enterprise to public-private partnership. Well, what's public-private partnership? It sounds good. Public means government, private means individual. Well, when the public, the government, partners with selected individuals, what do you have? Well, Mussolini called it corporatism. Hitler called it economic fascism. Today, that's the economic system we have. In Santa Cruz County, the reason I haven't been able to build a house on land zoned for 30 houses is because I'm not a partner. If that land is to be developed, I've got to give it over to a partner. Someone who is in the scheme of the New World Order's economics. And the third E is environment. But by environment, Agenda 21 doesn't mean government's role in protecting the water and the air. I mean, that's a legitimate role for government, to make sure that you or I don't pollute the public water supply and don't pollute the air supply. But under Agenda 21, environment has a totally different meaning. It means nature before man. That's why KC has to deal with wolves. Because the wolf, in the interest of nature, is more important than man's interest or man's life, for that matter. And in fact, Agenda 21 calls for, in one of its 3 governing documents, it calls for an 85% reduction in the human population. How do we reconcile that with American notions of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the use and enjoyment of property? We can't. Our federal government, when George Bush Sr. signed the Agenda 21 Accord in 1992, has sold us out. And without that knowledge, we're going to ride right down their stream. So where did Agenda 21 come from? Well, it's an international compact. It came from the United Nations in 1992. 178 nations, including ours, signed on. In 1993, when Bill Clinton became president, this is a totally bipartisan effort. The Republicans are no better than the Democrats. In 1993, Clinton infused every federal agency with their primary objective, the implementation of Agenda 21. That's why the Department of Interior does what it does. As a side note, I'll simply ask, what's the legitimacy of the Department of Interior? Article 1, Section 8 gives no such authority over land management to the federal government. That is a totally state-directed objective. The Department of Interior needs to be kicked out of your county, out of this county, and out of every county. Those lands that are federal lands in our counties need to be returned to the states. As I said, both Democrats and Republicans, since Agenda 21 has been formulated, we've had 2 Democrats and 2 Republican presidents. They both happen to be Bushes, but I don't think you can excuse the Republican Party on the basis that it's the Bush initiative. Clearly the Bushes, beginning with Prescott Bush, Senator Prescott Bush, George's father, who was the founder of the United Nations, are key players in this dynamic. Anybody from old-line Northeast families are key players in this dynamic, whether it's Bush or Rockefeller or Harriman or many of the others. Today, that circle has grown and includes people like the Irvines from Southern California, or the Packards from the Monterey Peninsula, and foundations throughout the country. Foundations play a huge role in the advent of Agenda 21. So, what can be done? Well, first, the subject which I don't have time really to talk about, first is we must fight regionalism. You see, our country is being regionalized, and it's been a process that's been ongoing for a long time. It was in the 1950s that Dwight Eisenhower brought to us a system of so-called COGS, or Councils of Government. Councils of Government are unelected officials. They usually include elected officials, but they're not elected to this post, who meet largely quietly. I won't say secretly, but quietly, because your newspapers don't report it. The COG has complete control over what your county board of supervisors or city councils do. The San Francisco Bay Area One Bay Area program is brought by the COG of the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a 9-county, 7.5 million population organization that is forcing this One Bay Area program without any control by the citizens or by the city or county governments on the people of that area. And they do that because all your federal dollars come back to your community through the COG. So your communities accept these COGs and do what they're told. Now, your COG in Siskiyou is a much simpler COG, and I don't see the evidence that they've advanced as far as metropolitan area COGs, but it's called SAGE. How many people here have heard of SAGE? Not much. That's something you need to know about. Well, some of the names on SAGE are help me because nobody knows what SAGE is. Yes, it's Valenzuela and Bennett from your Board of Supervisors, and some city council people named McNeil and Stearns. I don't know what cities they're from. But the SAGE organization is designed to regionalize this community, designed to implement the federal government's objectives, and it is an organization that needs to be outed among the citizens because their power will grow until they have the kind of power that ABAG has in the San Francisco Bay Area and other metropolitan COGs have throughout the country. It is a complete reinvention of our government through this system of COGs, they're called. And it's one that has to be rejected by citizens who want to restore the nature of America. It was Dwight Eisenhower who brought COGs to the United States. Membership in the COG is voluntary. So it took a while for all areas to have a COG. But over time, all the federal funds that come back from your tax payments are centered and controlled, directed through the COG. So if your city doesn't belong to a COG, it gets no federal dollars. So that's why all cities have opted to become a COG. But the problem with becoming a COG is that you've lost your independence. You know, and the dollars come back with federal government strings attached like what we're seeing in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'd rather not have those dirty dollars than to get them back in the second place. In the first place, of course, I'd rather not pay them if I'm not going to get them back. But that's a fight for tomorrow. Citizens have to understand that our government has been restructured, and we need to get rid of it. Just a final note on COGS, it was Ronald Reagan who brought them to this state while he was governor. So the problem is not just Democrats. The problem is our government.
Quick question. Some of us aren't local to Siskiyou County. How do we find out about the COGS in our various areas?
Well, you just go to the web and you put in COG with your county and you'll find out there's an organization called CalCog which coordinates the California COGS. It's on a much different basis than what you'll find in your county right now.
You'll get this map on your internet.
On our website you'll find this map.
You can. Used to. I know if you can get it still yet. Put on by the environmentalists. They got a room at UN. That's our big cause. We need to clear out of the UN.
Well, if we got out of the UN, it would not solve all these problems because DC is fully committed to America's position as an outpost in the New World Order.
They need to read Agenda 21 and the KBRA. They need to read those two real good. You know, Obama won't seem so bad.
Well, Obama is not the source of all this. He's a puppet in it. The one thing I can guarantee you about Obama is that when it comes to Agenda 21 implementation, whoever succeeds him will be worse than Obama. Obama was worse than Bush, Bush was worse than Clinton, and Clinton was worse than Bush. The next president will be worse yet until the citizens rise up and say, no more. The way to rise up is to take control of your county because we're not going to gain control of Washington, D.C. In fact, in the state as big as this, it's tough to gain control of our state capital. But once we begin, and I say we begin right here, we're at the top of the state. What flows from here is going to flow down. And if you can out the Agenda 21 program from this county, if you get the federal government out of your county, if you get your board of supervisors in line, that, I say, is the hope for the restoration of America. So in summary, I'd say that the Bay Area and Siskiyou are models for seeking the takedown of America. Siskiyou and the Bay Area have become, in actuality, the models for the defense of America. Because what's happening here is happening everywhere. Leadership and how American people can stand up and say no to the globalization of our communities is crucial. Awareness is the key. I invite you to rely in some regards on information and freedom advocates. For those of you who are not familiar with our website, you can go in. We've been working on this for 14 years. You'll find documents, you'll find commentaries, you'll find examples, you'll find inputs from people around, especially from English-speaking countries from around the world. They're all experiencing the same thing. Spread the word, gain control of your local government, fight the damn takedown, get the feds out of your county, and live like Americans.
Yay!